Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Morgan with Understanding You. And first off, it's been a hot minute since I have posted anything. But good news is I am indeed alive. Very grateful to be alive and very, very excited to talk about You Are the Placebo Effect by Joe Dispenza. So, let me just pull my. Welcome back, dude. Welcome back to everyone watching, all three of you, and mostly welcome back to me. I am alive, and here we go. Okay, just grab my notes. In this video today, I'm going to be talking about the book, kind of an overview of it, and some of the studies that he shares in the book, as well as the meditations and visualizations that he recommends, and how I applied those in my life and how it massively, massively helped me. And it was actually about a year ago now that I started reading this book and started doing some of these meditations and things that he recommends in the book. So I have a year built up of insights to share. So we'll see if this video turns into a part 2 or not. Okay, so a little bit about the book. The Placebo Effect by Joe Dispenza is an exploration of what the placebo effect is, how it was discovered, how it works, and how we can try to tap into our brain's abilities to heal and change and improve your life, your health, and your overall well-being. In the book, he opens up with his own personal story, his own miraculous recovery that he had. He had a very serious spinal injury, which, for those of you who I'm sure most everyone's aware, spinal injuries are very, very scary, right? And the prognosis with them is often not very good. And his doctors were essentially very, very certain that he would never recover. And he, instead of relying on his doctors, decided, screw their opinion, like, I am going to get better. And this is where he started to try to harness kind of the power of visualization and meditation to just help his body heal. In the book, Joe Dispenza talks about whoops, here I lost my spot. So a little bit more kind of an overview of what the book is about. He talks about the placebo effect and uses all of these studies that we have about the effects of, how people are healing from things like sugar pills and like how that's just mind blowing. And basically to demonstrate to you how powerful your mind really is. And then from there, teaching you about the mind body connection and how this is so important and how it can affect your mental and physical well-being, your attitude, and your perception of things. And then towards the end of the book, he talks about basically how you can kind of biohack your brain, how you can utilize the power behind the placebo effect to improve your health and your well-being. In the beginning of the book, he talks a lot about focusing on what you want and not on what you don't want, which was a really big deal for me because I think as a chronic worrier, seems like all I ever do is focus on exactly what I don't want to happen. So he talks about in his own personal experience, he just tried, as he was recovering from his spinal injury, he tried to get a very clear vision of what he wanted. He wanted his body to heal. He wanted his back to recover. He wanted his body to piece together the broken parts of his bones and things and mend things. And he just tried to get a very clear vision on what he wanted and to basically focus on the emotions that he would feel if he were to heal, and that he experienced a miraculous healing as a result. One thing I like that he talks about in the beginning of the book too is this isn't about lying to yourself, and it's not about denying your disease or your issues or whatever mental health problems you're having. It's about focusing on what's possible to and hoping and aiming toward like solutions instead of just fearing the worst case scenario. Okay, so a little bit, getting a little bit into kind of an introduction that he gives as far as what is the placebo effect. So most of us know the placebo effect is you take a sugar pill, right? And you experience crazy, awesome, helpful relief of symptoms, even though it's this inert pill that isn't actually doing anything. So, um, what researchers have noticed is that when they do experiments with people and they have a control group and they have their experiment group and they give the control group a pill that does nothing, the control group still improves. If they give them a pill and say, "Oh, this is going to help with your headaches," it somehow does, and we don't totally know why that is. Um, and so in the book, that's just an explanation for anyone who doesn't, you know, just an overview since we all learned it in high school. So the book also talks about the nocebo effect, which I had never heard of before. And the nocebo effect is basically the same thing as a placebo effect, but a negative reaction. So, in addition to your brain having a positive reaction to assuming that a pill is going to help you, even if the pill doesn't actually do anything, the same thing can happen if you expect a pill to do something that would hurt you. So, for example, side effects of medication, right? If you read the side effect labels on your medication, it's possible that you might just experience more side effects because you're actually anticipating side effects, which is like, great. Just don't read that, I guess. Um, so the reason I really wanted to read this book was because the placebo effect has always absolutely blown my mind. When you think about it, we all kind of take it for granted because we all just kind of grew up learning what it was. But like this is literally you're taking a pill that does absolutely nothing and yet you're feeling better. Your headaches are going away, or you're experiencing some kind of other health improvement, and it's like, how in the hell is this possible? Like, and how is it that like we take that for granted? Like this is insane. Like this is insane that you can take a pill that does nothing and yet somehow it does something still. Uh man, and I think it's interesting. Oh, in the book too, he does talk about the discovery of the placebo effect, which is just genuinely really fascinating. But can you imagine being one of the researchers that is like discovering the placebo effect and you're like, well, we gave this group this pill and then we gave this group a sugar pill and yet both groups improve, right? Because that's what you see a lot of times in these placebo studies. In fact, when companies are testing a drug, their aim is to have the drug do better than the placebo effect. Because if it doesn't, then there's like no point in like selling, or no one's going to want to buy the pill if it doesn't do very much, especially when you could just take a sugar pill and it do the same thing. So imagine being one of the researchers that's like starting to notice like, wait a second, like why are these people getting better? Like, did we actually give them sugar pills? It's just like, I think that's so funny to think about. It's just absolutely mind blowing. So how does the placebo effect work? So Joe Dispenza brings up kind of an explanation as to why it works that I had never heard before. And essentially, he asserts that the placebo effect, the power of the placebo effect is your brain having an expectation of healing, right? Because when you break it down, it's like, okay, I'm taking this pill and I'm telling myself that this pill is going to help me with yada yada yada, right? And then it does, even if there's nothing in the pill. And the crazy thing about the extent of the placebo effect is that you would think if someone knew that they were taking a placebo, then it wouldn't work. But there are actually studies showing that even if you know you're in the placebo group and you know the pill isn't doing anything, you can still experience benefits from it, which is just like even more insane. Like I don't like, okay, I know this is sugar and I'm just going to think that it's going to make my headaches better and somehow it does. That's just insane. That's insane. And again, it just demonstrates just how crazy powerful our minds really are with this kind of stuff. Um anyway, so he asserts that it's not the taking of the pill, it's not anything that's in the pill, obviously, because like there's nothing substantial in it, but it's simply just your expectation of healing is the thing that's healing you. And I think that's really interesting to look at it through that lens, because I think it just goes to show, okay, if my brain is expecting something to heal it and expecting certain symptoms to lessen, somehow my body goes about making that happen, which is just like, it's crazy. It's crazy and incredible. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about some examples he gives, because it completely blew my mind. I just was in total shock, because I always thought the placebo effect was super fascinating, but then hearing some of these crazy stories, I was just like, "Oh my gosh, like I am wasting my brain over here just like falling asleep watching The Office instead of meditating every second I'm awake." Anyway, okay, so he gives one example of let's see, I'm trying to decide which one to start with. Okay, so this story was crazy. There was this guy, and his doctors were telling him he had really, really bad cancer and that he only had a few months to live. And he died at the end of the few months that they were anticipating that he would die. And then they do an autopsy at the end to kind of see what's going on with the cancer inside of him. And it was crazy, because it turned out that when they actually cut him open, for whatever reason, the testing that they were doing was wrong. He did have cancer, but it wasn't aggressive enough that it should have caused him to die within the time frame that they were anticipating. And so what ends up happening is they cut him open and they're like, "Oh, he actually was not that bad." And it was just this crazy story of like, if his cancer wasn't really that bad, did he end up dying simply because his body thought that he was dying? There's just a lot of stories like this that he shares that are just kind of insane, either people healing or people hurting based off, again, what they were anticipating. They did this study with poison ivy that he talked about, where they would wipe people's arms with a harmless leaf and tell them it was poison ivy. And even though it was a harmless leaf, several people in the study developed a rash just because they were told that it was poison ivy. They developed a rash. Like, that's insane. And the even crazier part is they did the reverse too. And they, with several people in the study, told them, "Hey, this is a harmless leaf, but it was actually poison ivy." And they wiped their arm with it, and then and a lot of them, not all of them, but most of them didn't react to the poison ivy, even though they were known to be allergic. Some people, poison ivy doesn't affect them. Shout out to that. Wish that was me. It's not, unfortunately. Anyway, so absolutely mind-blowing that you can tell someone a leaf is poison ivy and they will develop a rash when it's actually not, and then vice versa. You can tell them this poison ivy leaf is totally harmless, and their body can actually like fight against it better somehow. I have no idea. And I don't know how that works because like sometimes you get exposed to poison ivy and you don't even know it. So then it's like I don't know what's going on with that. But anyway, that story was crazy. There was a woman, this story was amazing too. Really, really bad depression, and she went on a trial with this new med, and they did have a placebo and a control group, you know, like or a experiment group and control group where you know, the control people are just getting the placebo, or let's see, or maybe they're getting nothing. I forget. Anyway, she's in the group that's getting the sugar pill. And essentially, her depression over the 8 weeks totally lifted, and she felt so much better, and she was just certain that she was not in the placebo group because she was feeling so, so much better. And her doctors in the end told her, "No, actually, you were just taking a sugar pill." And she was completely flabbergasted. She was like, there's no way, like, can you double check? And they like, yeah, no, you really were, like, and they you know, showed her everything, and she couldn't believe it because she like had this massively difficult hovering depression for years that in 8 weeks was suddenly gone, all from a sugar pill. Absolutely insane. But then the more shocking thing was they did all these brain scans before and after on everyone part of the trial, and the researchers saw differences, significant, substantial differences in her brain scans. And so, literally taking this sugar pill that, you know, making her feel better, she really was getting better. Her brain really was changing. Everything in her brain was healing, all just because she thought that the medication was helping her, which was just absolutely wild. One of the studies that I think, he shared that blew my mind the most was they've done placebo research, not just with pills, but with actual surgeries. So, specifically, the one that he talked about in the book was they took a group of people that needed knee surgery and divided them into these groups where some are getting a placebo and some are getting the actual surgery, like placebo, meaning they're getting incisions that made it look like they got the surgery, but nothing actually happens other than the incisions. So you have these groups of people where there's the people actually getting the knee surgery and then the people that are just getting basically cut open and nothing done to them. And the shocking thing is that everybody got better. All the people who actually got the surgery got better, and all the people who just got the incisions got better. They reported much better, you know, less pain and more mobility and everything after the surgery, even like years after, not just, you know, not just like immediate follow-up. And that completely like shattered my brain hearing that, because it's one thing to think, okay, I'm taking this sugar pill, I'm expecting to get better, and somehow the pill just kind of helps a little bit. But then a freaking surgery, a full on pretend surgery makes your knee better. You have to be kidding me. That's insane. Like, what is going on? And that kind of gets me wondering as far as like how many people, like, assuming this is all true, and that these studies really are accurate, how many people who are undergoing certain treatment or certain, you know, surgery are getting better from the treatment or from the surgery are actually just getting better because they're expecting to get better and not because the surgery was actually all that helpful, but just the expectation was helpful. And the interesting thing about the placebo effect too that he talks about, and well, and I might be mixing this up with another book I read too, but essentially what we've seen in the research is that the more you expect something to help you heal, the more it will. And we generally have this kind of notion that a more invasive surgery or procedure will help more. So, placebo studies where people are getting like a shot in their arm versus like a pill, the shot in the arm is like more effective, even when the shot is nothing, even when it's just saline. And that's really interesting too. So, not only is it this crazy phenomenon of you're expecting something incredible to happen and then it does, but the higher your expectation is, the more impact and healing you actually experience from whatever pretend treatment you're getting, which is just like so crazy. A couple other studies he talks about in the book are people imagining working out or imagining practicing piano or chess or golf and actually getting better and getting stronger. That was just like scary to me. I don't know. I it is freaky to me to think you could sit there and close your eyes and pretend you're working out and your muscle mass increases. You can sit there, close your eyes, pretend you're playing the piano and you actually get better at the piano. You could sit there and pretend you're playing chess or golf or any of these things and you actually will get better and you will get stronger and your brain um I guess just figures out how to do those things better, which is just I never in a million years would have thought that you could just imagine working out and it would actually make a measurable difference. So those studies were just mind-blowing. Um, there was another study they did too where they took this group of like 60-year-old men and basically had them do all of these physical tests as far as like strength and um, flexibility and even IQ. They just like did a whole thorough look at kind of the overall well-being of these men in their 60s, and then told them, we want you to imagine that you're 20 years younger, and they let them do that for a while and like played music from 20 years ago and kind of had pictures of people that were famous 20 years ago and kind of put them in this environment for a little while and then retested them all after telling them imagine you're 20 years younger. And there was a significant improvement among all of their physical tests, like from like strength to stride length to like they were taller, which I don't think they were actually taller. I think they probably just had better posture. And their IQs improved by like I can't remember what the margin was, but their IQs like they got smarter by pretending that they were younger. I don't. That's just wild. That's so crazy. That's so crazy. Okay, so another big chunk of the book that he talks about that I think is important to kind of recap on is limiting beliefs. So he talks a lot about so if you don't know what a limiting belief is, it's this concept of you might have certain beliefs about yourself or about the world that could limit your potential. And so, for example, if you have certain beliefs about yourself that are really damaging, it's going to cause you to act and behave and show up in the world in ways that might actually be harmful to you and to people around you, even. So, if you believe about yourself that you're dumb or that you're poor or that you're annoying, imagine how differently you show up in the world versus if you didn't believe those things about yourself. And so he talks about trying to understand how to see these old limited beliefs for what they are, and they are just records of the past. Because what you believe and perceive about yourself or about life in general, um, it has an effect in how you act and how you behave and how your health manifests, right? Because we know how much strain, negativity, and stress and cortisol put on your immune system. Anyway, so he in the book is trying to bridge this gap here between the placebo effect and how powerful it is, how powerful your mind is in its anticipation of things, and then pointing out how if you're thinking negative thoughts, if you're perceiving yourself in a negative way, if you're um having all of these harmful thoughts and feelings about yourself, imagine all of the problems that you're perpetuating just incidentally, accidentally, because you're not aware of it. So he gave a list of common limiting beliefs that I thought were interesting, like things like it could show up like I'm short tempered, or I'm like my mom or dad. Life is difficult. Nobody cares about me. I have to work hard to make it in life. Things never go my way. I'm really unlucky. It's someone else's responsibility to make me happy. When I own this particular thing, then I'll be happy. My pain is normal and will never go away. I'm a bad person. I never have enough time to get everything done. The universe is conspiring against me. So he gives these examples of limiting beliefs that you might have and talks about how, again, the goal here, his advice is you biohack into your brain by doing meditations and visualizations that help retrain the way your brain is seeing life and the way your brain is seeing yourself and what you're expecting as far as physical health and mental health, and trying to just create a better life and allow your body and your mind to heal and to become something better and something different. So these limiting beliefs, he talks about how we all have them, and they all come from our childhood, right? And what would happen instead if we were to think more positively and to feel more positively about ourselves? Like what if instead of thinking the universe is conspiring against me, you thought the universe is working for me? How good would that feel? And how differently would you walk down the street if you believed that? And this took me on a long side tangent because I'm not someone who's very religious or whatever. So this whole notion of like the universe is working for me was like a little like flowering for me. A little, I don't know, just kind of abstract and out there. And I was like, not sure how to internalize that. So I thought a lot about this for a long time. And I was like, I think even if it's not true, like, I think if you believe the universe is coming together for your good, you're gonna be happier and you're gonna feel better and you're going to have an optimism that just makes life better and easier. So it's kind of funny. So even if you think some of this is like a little bit too out there, I think it's important to recognize that, I don't know, some things are going to help you regardless. And I think believing that good things are coming and that, the universe is working for you is something that will only be helpful for you to believe, if that makes sense. In this book, in this part of the book, he talks about how your beliefs always come from your past and that oftentimes they're not true. And that reminds me of I read this book called Unfuck Your Brain by Faith Harper, and she talks about trauma. I had never heard trauma defined this way, but she defined trauma as something happens in your life and you just feel like it didn't go the way that it should have gone or was supposed to go, and it just confused you and made you feel really, really unsafe, and like you have to now expect really bad things and be on guard for really bad things because it was such a violation of what you felt would be acceptable or expected. Anyway, and so keeping that in mind, if your beliefs are always coming from your past and it's usually those negative things, those things that went really wrong, that really warped and confused your sense of how things should be. He talks about how we get addicted to our beliefs from the past and to our emotions from the past as well, which is a really interesting concept that I've heard other people talk about as well, as far as we can get addicted to the high intensity from these emotions that we're used to feeling all the time, like maybe disappointment or shame or anger, these really, really intense, difficult emotions. like, weirdly, we can anxiety, we can get addicted to cortisol, and the cortisol that comes from feeling anxious. It's just crazy. He gives this really interesting example where so there's this man, and this was, hundreds of years ago that this went down, but there was this man who someone had put a voodoo hex on, right? And he was like he started to have these crazy negative symptoms like throwing up and diarrhea, and all from this voodoo curse that he was put under by this, person that was, posing to be some kind of witch. And his doctor at the time like understood that this wasn't this guy wasn't actually cursed, but he believed that he was, and because he believed that he was exhibiting all these symptoms. And so what he ends up doing is the doctor is like really smart, and he tells him, "Okay, here's how we break the curse," and like has him like take this medicine that just actually just I think it just if I remember correctly just made him throw up more. And then he so I think he tells him, "Oh, what happened was the witch did this thing to you, and now there's a lizard inside of you, and the lizard's eating you from the inside." So the doctor gets this lizard, and when the guy throws up, he throws the lizard into the bucket in a way the guy can't see. And he's like, "Look, we got the lizard out, so we broke the curse." And then the guy just immediately was like better after that. And it was just insane that a fake curse could make him so sick, but then a fake breaking of the curse could make him feel so much better. It's just wild. Uh, and I love this. This is paraphrasing. He said, "The man wasn't cursed because of the hex. He was cursed because of his belief in the hex." Which, bringing this back to, your limiting beliefs, it's, we're all cursed by our limiting beliefs, and not because they're true, but simply because of our belief in them. And he asks a really powerful question in that chapter as well. He says, "What, are you currently believing that's causing you pain and issues that changing that belief could potentially change some outcomes for you?" And I remember reading that and just being really shocked because I felt like I already knew there was a lot I was believing about myself that was holding me back as far as like emotionally and physically, because I was having a lot of health issues too at the time as I was reading this book. Um I wanted to share an example I had from a client I worked with a while back. And she would talk a lot about the guy that she was in a relationship with, and how she felt like she was very worried that things weren't gonna work out, and she was, um, very preoccupied with, he's not doing this or he's not doing that, so he doesn't care, right? And it, as we were unpacking, these things, we started to kind of notice with her that whenever so she would say, I need him to do XYZ so I can feel ABC, right? But then when he would do XYZ, she would totally discount it. She would be like, "Oh, he didn't mean it," or "He was just doing it for show." Like, she would just be totally dismissive of it. And so as we started to kind of unpack this together, what she started to notice was no matter what he did or said, she just couldn't she couldn't feel secure in the relationship. She couldn't feel like he cared about her. And it really hit her at one point that it was like this very devastating and scary moment for her where she was like, I feel totally stuck now. Cause now I'm seeing more rationally that he's doing all of these things to show me he cares and to show that he's invested in the relationship. And I still don't believe him. And I don't think there's anything he can say or do that will make me feel differently than I feel right now. And that was a really scary realization for her. So she actually started doing these meditations, and we, talked about, unpacking these things together in our sessions together. And what she realized was at the bottom of it all was kind of this like inability to internalize and accept love. So with her meditations, we had her just trying to see herself differently, to see herself as someone who could accept that love and who could feel cared about and who could accept the genuine kindness of, from other people. And it really slowly, things got a lot better in her relationship, and she felt a lot more safe and cared about, and felt like people around her, had her back more, which was really, really cool. So I want to talk a little bit about how he explains how to do these meditations. So again, in the book, he's talking all about the placebo effect, and then he's trying to explain to you how you can utilize that power your brain has to make your life better. And the best way to do that, in his opinion, is through meditation and visualization, because that's how you can kind of bypass those parts of your brain that are um, too judgmental and critical to accept a new version of things. This is why. So, for those who don't know, my background in mental health stuff is in hypnotherapy, and um, it was interesting. We talked a lot about in my training the reason why affirmations don't work very well, and for some people they work better than others. But especially for really, really core issues for people. For example, if you have someone who's anorexic, and you are telling them your body is beautiful the way it is, and they try to say that in the mirror, and it just goes right over their head because they cannot internalize something that feels so contrary to what they view as reality. And so the beauty of working through mental or physical issues in a state of like hypnosis or meditation, a deeply relaxed state, is that you're trying to bypass your more cognitive thinking brain and getting to the more subconscious brain, and trying to kind of rewire the way that you are seeing yourself or the way that you're seeing the world. And it's a lot more effective than just looking in the mirror and saying an affirmation that may or may not really sink in, usually won't sink in. And not that there's never a benefit to affirmation. I just think that this is a lot more effective. And that's what I've seen. I've tried a lot of things with my own mental health, my own physical health, and I think the meditations are far more powerful than I've ever had any success with affirmations. So he explains in the book. So a little bit more backstory with Joe Dispenza. If you go to his website, he has tons of meditations. Lots of different kinds for lots of different topics. I've bought several of them and I really enjoy them all. But my favorite meditation is definitely the one that he introduces in the book. And this meditation, it's different than a typical meditation. So I think when most people think of typical meditation, they're thinking of I'm going to sit quietly and think of nothing, think of my breathing, think of the ocean, and not really try to think about anything in particular, but trying to clear your mind. And that's not necessarily the way he approaches meditation. It's more of like a visualization than it is like a maybe what a typical person would consider a meditation. So he has you first, like, go through some steps of relaxing your body, and then some quiet time of trying to think of nothing, which is like pretty typical of like a hypnosis session or a typical meditation. And then he gets to like the visualization aspect, which is where you pick something you want to change. And it could be something physical, it could be something emotional, it could be something like about what success you want in life or whatnot. And you pick something, And he has you kind of like see the way that it is right now and let it go, and then imagine, what if it was the way I wanted it to be? So you could imagine an example of this would be like for a physical healing thing. Let's say you have you know, back issues. And so you imagine yourself as, okay, I'm letting go of like these back issues, and I'm imagining myself as not having that. I'm imagining myself feeling good and being able to be flexible and stand and walk and run and jump and do all these things and to feel great. And he has you try to spend a lot of time focusing on that emotion that that positive thing you want would cause you to feel. So, for example, if you were to imagine yourself, having less back pain or no back pain, then you can imagine you would feel really excited and great and see yourself doing these things that you want to do. And it brings in this feeling of immense excitement and gratitude and peace and contentment. And then he has you just kind of like let it go, kind of surrender it to, like a higher, whatever, and from there you end the meditation. So that's what the meditation looks like. It's definitely something you can do on your own without a recording or anything, but you can find the recording of that specific meditation is called You Are the Placebo Effect on his website. And I think there's a couple different versions of it. Some are longer and some are shorter. There's also some on YouTube too, but they're not the best quality. But that I've tried a lot of his meditations, and that by far has been my favorite is the one from the book. So that's this is how he recommends that you go about basically trying to hijack your brain's placebo abilities into bettering your life. So, I want to talk now about some of the big themes from the book. I hit on just kind of some of the overall stories and things that I thought were pertinent to someone who's interested in reading the book. But now I'm going to talk about some of the kind of overall themes that he shares. Obviously, mind body connection. He puts a huge emphasis on the connection between our body and our mind, and how our thoughts, our beliefs, and our emotions can influence our physical health and our well being. He talks about our emotional addictions. Now, this was one of the, I think, biggest takeaways I had from the book, because I've never heard someone say this before, but he said, basically, you get addicted to these emotions that you're used to feeling, like anger, shame, disappointment, um, feeling unwanted or feeling uncared about. You are addicted to those, addicted to them. And I thought a lot about that, because it hit me really hard that that just made sense to me, but I was like, well, I don't know. He's saying that, but I don't know if that's actually what's going on. But I think it really makes sense, especially if you break it down and you realize, okay, so, something bad happens in your childhood and makes you feel like, for example, makes you feel really unloved and unwanted. Maybe you had a parent leave or something. If you feel unloved and unwanted, then part of you is going around the rest of your life repeating that pattern of looking for proof as to why you're unloved and unwanted. And so even though people might be showing up and doing good and kind things for you, you're going to be hyper focused in all of the ways in which you feel like people are letting you down, so that you can continue to perpetuate this belief that just keeps you feeling and expecting the way that you're used to feeling. And this is, in my mind, this is a self-protective thing, because if you are anticipating disappointment, then you might feel like you can avoid disappointment. You might feel like you can protect yourself from that disappointment. And if you're really on guard for it, it might feel like you're being successful in that. But instead, you're just putting all this massive chronic stress and cortisol on your immune system that's actually just leading you down this rabbit hole of a lot of health issues, while you're not actually really protecting yourself at all. You're just making yourself sick. Oh, that's a quote he says a lot in the book too is, if our thoughts, can make us sick, which we know that to be true just from so much evidence that, for example, there was this study they did, I can't remember the name of the study, but they were looking at, all of these negative instances in children's lives, and it was like things like divorce or things like a parent leaving the home or abuse or financial issues, and what they saw in this study that was just absolutely mind-blowing was that the more of these instances of negative things that happen in your childhood, the worse health outcomes you had later in life, like more autoimmune disease, more heart disease, like more obesity, more just like a lot more health issues, and it just seemed to be like such an obvious correlation as far as these crappy things happening to you having a major detriment on your health. So he would say if our thoughts can make us sick, then our thoughts can make us well. And I just that's really beautiful and that's really profound. And I hope that's true. I have a lot of personal experience that I feel like I've seen it benefit me a lot. Um and okay, so yeah, he talks about yeah, let's see what else here. He just gives a lot of stories of people who start implementing these meditations and how it helps them heal a lot of like chronic issues that they were having as far as either mental or physical. Like I know there were some autoimmune disease stories, and there were stories of people with really bad depression or really, really serious other mental health problems. Like, and basically just turning everything around through basically these meditations where they just imagine their life is better. They just imagine it's better, and then somehow it gets better and their health gets better. And it's crazy and very compelling. You know, of course, we don't know if these stories are true at, you know, at the root of it all, but it's very, very compelling stories for sure. So another big theme from the book is he he talks about how if the placebo effect is as powerful as, you know, we're seeing from all these studies, then how often are we reacting or feeling a certain way just because we think that we're supposed to? For example, like getting older and having aches and pains, like where we saw the study of those men who pretended to be younger and then were smarter and stronger and felt better and just crazy. Like, so it's like, are you know, are you, as you're aging and you're getting more sore and stuff, is that just because you're expecting to get more sore, or is that real, you know? And it's certainly worth questioning. um Being around someone who's sick and then getting sick, like how often is it that you actually were exposed to that person's germs and you're actually sick because of the exposure to the germs, and how often is it that you just expected to get sick, so then you got sick, but it was just like a nocebo effect. It's kind of crazy to think about. Pregnancy, for example, you're expecting to feel sick, and then, you know, um, are you actually feeling sick, or is your brain kind of tricking you into thinking that you're feeling sick? And it, you know, certainly worth thinking about. So he talks about another big theme, just opening your mind up to what is possible. You don't know how much you might be hindering your personal healing or your personal well-being by simply believing that things can't or won't get better. And the true sad truth of it is that you may have health issues or mental health issues that can't be fixed. That might be the reality, right? It might be that this thing you're facing cannot be fixed or cannot be healed to the extent that you wish that it could be. But your best chance at success and healing is always to believe that you can heal. And it's this kind of weird conundrum because yes, believe like healing might not be possible, but if you believe that it's not possible, immediately the placebo effect is working against you. Because if you're telling yourself, "Oh, these treatments never work, these things never pan out, like I'm never gonna get better," then immediately what your brain is thinking when you go take some kind of treatment is, "This is not going to work." And that's automatically making the placebo effect work against you. And I personally know how hard that is though. So this is so much easier said than done, right? Because it's like, okay, well, I'm just going to be so optimistic and just think that everything is awesome and that I can fix all of these issues, and it's not so easy a turnaround. So a couple years back I tore muscle in my back, and absolutely excruciating. Um Back muscles, turns out, are very essential for walking, sitting, breathing, and, yeah, so I when it tore, I couldn't breathe. And I was so, so, so painful. And it, was a nightmare to try to recover from this injury, and essentially, I was seeing specialist after specialist and, um lots of physical therapy and chiropractors, and we even did several rounds of lidocaine shots, and we did um oh, what's it called when they the that doesn't matter. Anyway, lots of treatments, and it was weird because eventually the MRIs were showing like that I was doing better, but I still didn't feel better. I still couldn't clean. I still couldn't sit up. I still couldn't. There was just so much I couldn't. I was in so much pain. And yet we look at the MRI and it's like a clean muscle. The nerves look great. Everything looks fine. Like, why am I in so much pain? And I was very, very scared because this was months and months just dragging on and on and on, and me trying all these different things. And I was really starting to get scared that I would never get better. Now this all took place before I read this book, um, just to put the context in there. And I was getting really, really scared that I would just always be that way, that I would never get better, that no treatments were ever gonna help, because that's what I started to think after trying so many things, and those things didn't help. So I remember having like a heart to heart with myself one day where I could feel myself just giving up, and it was really scaring me. Where I could feel myself just not wanting to try anything, not wanting to have hope anymore, like just kind of wanting to be like, okay, this is just my life now. It's just that I'm just in bed all the time and I can't like take care of my kids by myself or sweep my kitchen floor because I'm just in so much pain constantly. And I remember having this heart to heart with myself of like, maybe I can't get better. But if I think that I can't get better, then I definitely can't get better. So my only chance at actually getting better is to believe that I can get better. And so I had this kind of heart to heart of like, all right, I just have to believe that I can get better so that I keep trying. Because if I don't keep trying, nothing's ever going to get better. And uh, my sister's had a lot of really awful long-term chronic health issues. And one thing that she has said that I've really liked to kind of like bring like a compassionate view with that too is because it can be so disheartening and hard to keep trying when you feel so disappointed and when you're in so much pain, or you're so exhausted. And one thing she said is like she goes through these bouts of trying new things, and then she takes a break and just maintains. And then she tries some new things, and then she takes a break and just maintains. So it's not like this all or nothing of like you have to every day be trying something new to make your health or your mental health better. You can approach it with compassion and patience. But at the bottom of it all, if you don't believe it can get better, you're shooting yourself in the foot, unfortunately. Again, easier said than done, but important to recognize. So now I kind of want to talk about my experiences after reading the book and starting to implement these meditations that the one that I talked about that he taught in the book, as well as doing some other meditations from his website. But primarily, the book one is my favorite, so that's usually my go-to one. And I think a lot of people think that meditation's a lot harder than it needs to be. And I'm gonna tell you that even though I struggle with making a lot of things harder than they need to be, I don't make this harder than it needs to be. What I do usually is what I started doing and what I still do most days is I will set my alarm so that I wake up before my kids wake up, and I'll get out of bed and turn on the heat or the AC or, depending on the time of year, brush my teeth, whatever, and then just get right back in bed. And if I'm feeling really tired, I'll just stay in bed and won't do any of those things. I'll just stay in bed. But usually I'll get up just to wake myself up a little bit, and I get back in bed and then I do the meditation audio. Or oftentimes I don't even do it with an audio anymore. I just play music because I'm so used to just the habit of, how you do it, that I just kind of do my own thing with it. Um, so yeah, I just would get right back in bed and just do that for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, just whatever I felt like I wanted to do, whatever I felt like I had time for. Um, and I know that sounds like a lot. An hour sounds like a lot, but um, if you have several things that you're working on, time flies. And it's a fun time. So interestingly, what I noticed as I started doing these meditations, so I was doing these again, the ones from the book that he recommends, where you are sitting there and after you get through all the relaxation stuff, you're focusing on whatever it is that you want to happen, and then imagining that it's just already happened, that you're already there, that you're already healed, that you're already experiencing whatever it is you want to be experiencing. And what I noticed from that was a massive amount of excitement, of content, and of gratitude. Now, I'm someone who's tried a lot of things in my healing journey over the years, and gratitude journals are one of those things. And let me tell you what, there's nothing like sitting down at the end of the day, really frustrated, really tired, and then trying to force myself to feel grateful. That never really worked very well for me. I could never really get myself to be very effective with a gratitude journal because it always felt really forced, because I would be feeling really stressed. I'd be feeling really anxious. I'd be feeling a lot of pressure. And then here I am sitting here like, well, at least I have AC. At least I have a roof. At least my kids are cute, but it just felt so surface. I didn't actually feel very grateful. Because I just felt like I was trying to force a state of mind that just didn't want to be there. So the beauty of the meditations is that I started to notice myself kind of basking in this gratitude that then naturally carried out. So for example, one of the things I started working on initially was some health issues I was having. And so when I would imagine myself like feeling healed and doing better, I would just feel so happy, I would feel so excited, I would feel so grateful, and it was all, like, fake in my head, but practicing that state of being over and over and over again just carried out into my day, where I just started noticing myself having moments of just feeling my heart feeling really full and genuinely grateful without it being forced at all, which was really, really cool and very helpful. And not that, this made me into this perfect, amazing, stoic philosopher that's just indifferent toward everything, but it certainly seemed like it really curbed a lot of anxiety, and it helped me to feel a lot more optimism about the future. One thing, so a couple other examples kind of tie this all together, was another thing that I worked on, in addition to health, was money. Like, I've just always kind of felt like I was stressed about money, even when we were doing financially really well. me and my husband, and I would just feel stressed about money anyway, and I would, like, obsessively, like, check our bank statements and stuff like that and freak out if things were if big expenses were coming up, and, even again, even if we had a lot of savings, it's like I just couldn't get it in my brain to not overstress and feel extremely anxious and feel all this urgency. So that was another thing I would meditate on, and I would just imagine that we had, like, a ton of money and that I'd feel how would I feel? I would feel so safe, I would feel so excited, I would feel so grateful, and again, that just started, like, carrying out into the day, and so when big purchases and stuff would arise, instead of me freaking out, I would feel this sense of, everything's gonna be okay. Like, everything's gonna be fine. It's gonna work out. We're gonna figure it out. We always have, we always will, you know. And it was really, really interesting. So I also started doing this too with a lot of in addition to like health issues, like mental health issues. And what I noticed overall, I think this was kind of over the course of like 6 months of doing these meditations, not every day, but most days, was I went from feeling really anxious and really stressed and really concerned about all of these issues, kind of just in panic mode all the time. And I think so I've in a lot of books I've read, they talk about this as just that as a child, if you experience a lot of childhood trauma, your your nervous system gets kind of really out of whack. And so little things will set you off and you just kind of feel chronically freaked out all the time. And I never felt like I could rest. I never felt like I could rest unless all of my concerns and issues and everything on my to-do list was done. And of course, that's never the case. There's always something to worry about. There's always something on your to-do list that needs to be done. So I was just in this chronic state of like, man, I wish I could feel relaxed, but I can't because there's all these problems and there's all these issues and there's all these things going on and my to-do list is so long. And so overall, as I was doing these meditations and I started imagining all of these issues and concerns and fears like being resolved, I started to kind of take my brain over from this space of like survival mode over into a more peaceful state. Because instead of feeling like I could never rest until all these issues were fixed, I was spending every morning thinking, man, how great is it gonna feel when that thing is just, like, fixed, when we have more money, when, my health is better, when all these when all these issues are resolved. And so my brain went over from survival mode over to these problems have solutions. And so instead of waiting for these things to be resolved before I could feel peaceful and feel calm, I started to realize I could feel calm and peaceful because all of these issues that I have do have solutions. And even though the solution isn't here right now, because a solution exists, I can relax. I can take it easy. I can work toward this thing slowly and confidently and just not feel all of this urgency and anxiety that's just constantly boiling over. So that was incredible. And I felt like there was just this huge shift again where I'm going over from survival mode over to this more optimistic, more content, more peaceful attitude towards life. And again, not that I was perfect, but it was substantial. And I've tried a lot of things over the years to work through issues from my childhood, a lot of therapy, a lot of different techniques. Everything, I feel like everything has helped me, but I don't think anything has helped me as substantially as um, proactively and consistently doing these meditations. Um, yeah, so it was really incredible and it was really exciting. One other example from my own experiences in doing these meditations was I had developed an eating disorder. I'm saying that without actually knowing that, just based off the symptoms. I was having a really, really hard time with food, and it was um in my mind, it was a result of so many really strict elimination diets I was doing in order to try to help my health that ended up, like, just kind of feeling like it kind of broke my brain around food, where I just wanted to eat everything all the time because I couldn't have certain foods for so long, and I was just, binge eating a lot, and it was really, really bad. I was gaining weight really fast, and I was feeling really sick because I was eating so many unhealthy foods that I couldn't have for so long, and I was really scared. I was really, really scared because I wasn't sure how I just felt completely out of control. I wasn't sure how I could get myself to not be doing that anymore. And it was I don't know, it was a really, really hard time for me. I had never ever ever felt so out of control with food before. And so I started focusing on that with my meditations, and I would just, in my meditations, I do all the relaxing stuff, and then I would just imagine myself feeling really neutral about food, feeling really calm, feeling like I can enjoy food in healthy increments. I even ended up like talking to a bunch of my friends that I feel like have really good relationships with food, and I asked them like, how do you feel when you're eating? Like, how do you think about food? How do you see yourself and your relationship with food? And I listened to their perspectives and how they saw themselves and how they saw food. And I took those into my meditations, and I just tried to imagine that in these ways I was like these people and experiencing the feelings that they were experiencing. And within a few months of doing that, like, my binge eating just totally stopped. And it wasn't this forceful thing, which is so hard for most people to it's so hard for most people to get out of any eating disorder type issues. Again, I'm like self-diagnosing here, but it's so difficult because it's such a shame cycle of, like, you willpower yourself into not doing whatever it is whether it's the restriction or it's the overeating. You try to willpower yourself through it, but then eventually it breaks, and then you eat too much, or you restrict, and then you feel all the shame, and it just creates this like loop. And it's so, so difficult to break simply with your willpower. Your willpower is not strong enough to break addictions most of the time. People just don't have enough of it, and that's like, it's just kind of a sad reality, right? But I think that's the beauty of approaching your mental health through this lens of meditation, because you're trying to get to the root of the problem. And at the root, you're trying to heal your brain, heal kind of your heart, heal whatever it is that's broken inside of you that's causing these symptoms, right? Because eating disorders are just a symptom, right? They're a symptom of something internally that's going wrong. Um, yeah, so that was absolutely incredible to me, to watch myself pull myself out of these food issues. And and it's been a year now, and I do such a fantastic job with food. Like, yeah, I have my days where I eat too much, or yeah, eat too much ice cream usually. And but overall I eat very healthy. I do a great job uh with my portion control. And the cool thing is, it doesn't feel hard. It doesn't feel like I'm forcing it. It just feels like that's just who I am. And that's the beauty of this is, one of the big lessons and perspectives that I took from this book was, don't try to change your behavior, try to change the way you see yourself. Because if you change the way you see yourself, your natural actions and behavior just change automatically. And it doesn't feel like this forced imposition that runs out as soon as your willpower runs out. So it's a beautiful thing. And that, yeah, it helped me just a ton. Um, a couple other things I wanted to share is how, doing these meditations, I noticed just how warped my self-perception was. And one thing I noticed initially as I was focusing like on health stuff and mental health stuff, one thing I noticed initially was I saw myself as sick. I saw myself as someone who is sick. And I was like, I don't want to see myself that way, because I think I'm perpetuating all of this negativity and seeing myself that way. So I started to try to see myself as someone who was healthy and someone who felt good and someone who healed really easily and healed really well. And the beauty is that although I still have, health issues and concerns I'm working through, I am far better than I used to be. And I'm also far more relaxed about it. That was interesting. Just going on the health tangent for a second. Um, I used to be so freaked out about my health diagnoses and my health issues, and I was so scared anytime I was doing blood work, and I was, like, really freaked out and really worked up, and it was interesting to see myself go from that over to just feeling this amount of trust and content that it was like, in my head, yeah, I have these, these things going on, and I'm either I'm gonna keep healing or I'm gonna need some treatments or I'm gonna need some medication, and just feeling like very neutral about it, which is such a great thing because that helps my body to actually heal better, I imagine, because I'm not in this chronic state of just freaking out about my health. I just feel a lot of peace and content feelings around it that I'm sure are much easier for my body, to deal with. So that was really interesting. So also seeing myself, I realized a lot of my self-perception too was seeing myself as very broken emotionally because I had experienced a lot of issues in my childhood and growing up, and as a result of that, I kind of saw myself as emotionally broken, like emotionally stunted. And I was like, I don't want to see myself that way, especially because I've spent the last like 10 years of my life, like really in therapy and reading and, doing all these things to heal and journal and meditate. And I'm like, I don't want to see myself as someone who is broken. I want to see myself as someone who's resilient and someone who's healed and someone who's continuing to heal. And so I loved getting to work on that. That was really powerful for me, gave me a lot of confidence. One cool insight I had was just in one of my meditations, I remember realizing like how stuck I get in analysis. I don't know if you've heard the term analysis paralysis, but that's been a huge issue for me in my life. And my in my meditations, I was just realizing how there's just 0 room at all for me to make any mistakes. And because there's 0 room to make mistakes, I am so overly cautious when I'm trying to make a decision because I'm so scared of making the wrong decision. And then I end up wasting all of this time overthinking just because I'm scared of what would happen if I made a mistake. Now, mistake is such a loaded term, right? Because oftentimes in life, we're always making the best decision we can in the moment that we're making it. And sometimes we won't know that a decision is a mistake until after the fact. And we have to make that decision and then see how it goes and get that feedback to actually know if it was a mistake or not. So it's such a loaded thing where you're setting yourself up to fail because mistakes are part of life. They're part of the experience. They're part of improving. And if you don't let yourself make mistakes, you're just not letting yourself live. You're not letting yourself try. You're not letting yourself do anything different. So so that was really powerful, kind of like learning how to just be more um patient with myself and trying to view mistakes through a more positive lens as far as like, oh, this is fine, this is not a big deal, this is a part of the experience. I remember my husband gave me this like really funny example as I was like working through this in my mind, after, in between my meditations. And he was like, it's like if someone gave you a bunch of socks and said, okay, you need to find what drawer is going to be the sock drawer, in your room. And he said most people would, kind of look around now, oh, I think this is a good drawer, put it in. And he's like, but instead, what you do is you think about every single drawer, every single opportunity, every single possibility, every single piece of furniture that isn't even in the house yet that could possibly be a spot where the socks could go, and think about all the pros and all the cons of every single drawer and every single piece of furniture, and just completely exhaust yourself in trying so hard to come up with the quote unquote right answer instead of just putting the socks away and telling yourself, if this drawer doesn't work out, I can always change it. Oh, that was such a painful metaphor, but it was so spot on. And yeah, so I think the meditations, working through that, definitely giving myself more flexibility was very helpful. Still something I definitely need to grow on, but the sock metaphor is deeply imprinted on my soul now. So, a couple more takeaways I want to share here, and then I will be done. Is Oh, I already mentioned this one. It's don't don't change your behavior, change the way you see yourself, right? And the best, most effective way to change the way you see yourself is in that deep state of relaxation where you're surpassing, your cognitive mind, getting into your subconscious mind, where things can resonate more deeply. And then another thing I've thought a lot about is back in my hypnotherapy training, we talked about how there's two types of fundamental beliefs, and it's either a belief about yourself or a belief about the world around you. And so when you're trying to think about how to improve your life and what beliefs are getting in the way, you can kind of break it into those categories, which is really helpful. It's like you could sit there and think to yourself, what beliefs do I have about myself that might be harmful, that might be causing problems? And how would life be different if I were to change those beliefs? And then you can carry that, into your meditation and think, okay, well, instead of thinking that I suck and everyone hates me, how about I think that I'm a human being and that, people appreciate the good that I have, even if I'm not perfect, like you might have to start with something more neutral sometimes before you go to something more positive, but just kind of depends on where you're at. So anyway, but ultimately, I think so you've got these two different camps of belief, right? You've got the beliefs about yourself and beliefs about the world. And so as you're analyzing yourself and trying to figure out what beliefs might be holding you back, can be helpful to kind of, you know, think about how you're seeing the world and think about how you're seeing yourself and think about what ways your life could be better if you would just change those beliefs. But at the root of it all, I think the most vital belief that you should be focusing on first is just believing that your life can get better, which again I've talked a lot about, but it's it's vital to your physical and your mental healing, to your success in life. You have to believe that things can get better. If you don't believe things can get better, they won't and they can't. And so if you feel stuck, if you ask yourself, do I think things can get better? Do I think my health can get better? Do I think my physical well-being can get better? Do I think my mental health can get better? Do I think my success financially, my situation, my life situation can get better? Do I think my relationship can get better? And if the answer to any of that is no, then that is something you got to unpack, because if your answer to that is no, then you're already holding yourself back. And so the beauty is with these meditations and in conjunction with kind of thinking through it too, you can start to change the way that you see yourself, your life, your relationships. You can start to see things as this could get better. And when you start to see it as this could get better, you actually start to take different action just naturally because you're believing something different. And all of our actions come back to what we believe, because we don't act on things that we don't believe. And we don't, what did I just say? We don't act on things we don't believe. And we act on the things that we do believe, even if they're detrimental. Crush. um, the last takeaway I'll share from the book was I realized how hard I was trying to feel in control of my life because letting go feels really scary. So, if you're familiar with Stoic philosophy, probably familiar with the term focus on what you can control, let go of what you can't control, right? And interestingly, what I kind of noticed over and over again in these meditations as I was doing them was how hard I was trying to control things that I genuinely couldn't, but how scared I was to let go of the illusion of control. And this was mind blowing to me because I realized there are so many things in my head that I lie to myself that I can control, that I'm in control of, that I'm just not. And I spend all this energy trying to micromanage these things that genuinely I have no ability to control. But I will sit there and lie to myself that I can control these things because it makes me feel safer. But it's just an illusion of feeling safe because when you're exhausting yourself, pretending you can control things that you can't, what you're actually doing is just exhausting yourself because you're not actually controlling anything. And so there's this weird phenomenon. And I think this is kind of the beauty and power of any meditation or any prayer is just that power and that relief that comes from that emotional surrender. That surrender of I'm letting this thing go. This is out of my hands. This is not in my control. And it brings so much peace and so much relief. And it can feel really scary at first to let go of that control of whatever or that illusion of control. It can feel really scary to let go of because we want to feel like we're in control of things. We want to feel like we can stop bad things from happening or that we can make good things happen. And it's scary to have this kind of feeling of surrender. But once you have it, there's a massive weight that's lifted where suddenly you just feel like everything's going to be okay and that you don't have to be micromanaging everything and you don't have to be worried constantly about these things. That if issues arise, you can deal with them without all of this anticipation exhausting you in the meantime. That quote is just so powerful. I will never be able to internalize it enough. The focus on what you can control and let go of what you can't. It's really hard for us to be honest with ourselves about what we can and what we can't control. We will lie to ourselves that we can control things we can't just so that we can feel more safe. But again, it's an illusion of feeling safe because really what you're feeling is just this constant worry that you think is protecting you and is just dragging you down. So that is what I thought of the placebo effect. Or you are the placebo effect. I am really excited because next month, Dr. Joe Dispenza is actually going to be in Los Angeles, and I am going with my dad to see him live, meditate with thousands of other people. It's going to be crazy. It's going to totally blow my mind. So if you want to hear about my experience with that, stay tuned. I'm sure I'll do a video talking about it. And yeah, I can't wait because I've loved his meditations. I've loved his lectures and stuff. And yeah, I'm just excited to be there in person and be meditating with a ton of other people. I'm just like going to be superheroes all together. Going to be wild. Yeah, so thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button and comment, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.